Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to do a live stream just to put some things in context. I think one of the ways that we can do that is looking at this piece from Tulsi Gabbard. She has some very interesting things to say that I think will, let's say, demonstrate ideas that I put forward in a few of the videos that I recently put up. One of them is when is a car accident not an accident? That would be the death of Michael Hastings. The other one is can you trust the corporate media? That is the death of the DC Madam. And also contrasting her delivery to the last video, which was the ex-Twitter executives exposed. So without further ado, let me run it so you could hear it for yourself.
Review. I took an oath, both as a soldier and as a member of Congress, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, I've had the privilege of serving alongside many of you in Congress for 8 years, representing the people of Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District, serving on the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. I'm honored to be able to continue to serve as a Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserves now for almost 20 years, where during that time I deployed to 3 war zones and participated in multiple overseas training exercises, where I had the opportunity to see firsthand what life is like in countries where there is no First Amendment, where there is no free press, where government deems itself to be the moral arbiter to its people, dictating to them what is right and wrong, what can and cannot be said, who can speak, who cannot, who is free to worship, and who is not. Now, our founders understood the importance of enshrining our God-given freedoms in the Constitution and Bill of Rights to ensure that no matter which party or person may be in power at any given time, our founding documents serve as a reminder of these freedoms that are guaranteed to every American. Thomas Paine said, "He that would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from opposition. For if he violates this duty, precedent that will reach to himself." We cannot be so short-sighted as to thinking silencing speech that we don't like today will not result in our own voices being silenced tomorrow. The work that you've all been charged with in this committee affects all Americans, and it is too important to allow it to fall victim to partisan politics. No matter how deep your differences, we must all agree to stand on the side of liberty. Unfortunately, right now we live in a country where many Americans are afraid to speak freely, afraid to express themselves, afraid to actually have real open dialogue and debate, afraid of losing their job, being canceled, or being accused of a crime, which could happen if recently introduced legislation criminalizing so-called hate speech is passed into law, speech that, no matter how abhorrent, is still protected under the First Amendment. Now, this fear and this culture of fear and self-censorship is not unfounded. We have individuals in our government often working through their arms in the mainstream media and big tech, doing exactly what our founders rejected, trying to control what we, the people, are allowed to see and say under the guise of protecting us from so-called misinformation or disinformation. Now, of course, they appoint themselves as the sole authority and voice of truth, of information, backed by the most lethal force on earth with the power to target anyone they deem a threat. They alone are the ones, self-designated, who get to decide what is true and what is false, what is information and what is misinformation or disinformation. They say they're doing this for us, that they're doing this for our own good, to protect the people. But in reality, the truth is they think that we're too stupid to think for ourselves, too stupid to discern for ourselves and to draw our own conclusions. Now, the idea that we must just blindly accept whatever the government or those in power tell us is true goes against the very essence of our Constitution and Bill of Rights, which were created as a resounding rejection of the reign of kings, churches, and authorities. They tell us we must blindly trust them or face the consequences, even though our government has a long history of lying to us, the American people. Just to cite a few examples, we were lied to about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which spurred the war that I and so many others served in and so many others sacrificed their lives in. They lied for almost 2 decades, claiming success in Afghanistan, when in fact we saw failure after failure after failure, coming at a great cost to this country. We saw lies about Vietnam that were revealed in the release of the Pentagon Papers. We saw lies about our own government illegally surveilling Americans. These are just a few examples. There are many more. Ranking Member Plaskett talked in her opening comments about how individuals in the FBI also throughout our country's history have abused their power, weaponizing those agencies to advance their own political interests. This is not and cannot be reduced to a partisan fight. The stakes are too high. We all must recognize our own responsibility to stand against such abuses. But as we sit here today, the danger is that if we choose to reject or challenge whatever those in power declare is the so-called truth, we are accused of being anti-authority. We are accused of being a danger to society, accused of spreading misinformation, and are then targeted, smeared, and called things like Russian asset, white supremacist, bigot, racist, sexist, extremist, traitor, and so on. More dangerous than any baseless smear, our own government institutions, which exist to serve the people, they are being weaponized against us. The Department of Homeland Security declared a heightened domestic terrorism threat due to 3 factors, the first of which is, quote, the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions, end of quote. They are the ones who get to decide what those false or misleading narratives are.
That part that she just spoke about, I think that is the key. That would kind of touch on what I uploaded in the one about the car crash, because if you did watch, or maybe you should, if you watched that video about Michael Hastings, specifically the things that he said about the Obama administration, spying on journalists, right? Being able to put into effect targeting Americans, then you understand why we are where we are today, right? Because people act like this whole thing is new. It's not new, right? There's several instances of where you had, let's say, the journalists that represented the best among us. You had these people just taken out. Now, Michael Hastings was one of them, but there were others. Gary Webb, Danny Casolaro. And of course, people have touched on this information before, but it's from so long ago. It's like now you think about it and you ask questions about it, and people are like, well, what? What are you talking about? Right? Nobody remembers. Nobody knows about it. And I think that is the very sad part of it, right? People don't even know that we're here because of these things that happened before, right? But nobody took note of it.
Former CIA Director John Brennan said in 2021 that, quote, members of the Biden team are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas. An unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, and even libertarians. End of quote. Attorney General Garland charged his newly created domestic terrorism unit with targeting those who hold, quote, anti-authority views. That included parents who dared to protest at Board of Education meetings, concerned and standing up for the right for themselves to have a say in their children's education.
So anyone basically who is against what is being done by the establishment, that person is considered a threat. Now, who falls under that broad heading? Mostly people with conservative views. For the most part, that is the only people that would affect. Right? The people that say, listen, we don't want certain things being taught to our children in their schools. Right? We don't want you bringing in all these ideologies which are, yeah, maybe they're old, but they were never taught in schools. Right? All the identity politics that's being taught in schools, the gender ideologies, all these different things. Right? If a parent stands up and says, listen, man, no, don't just bring this stuff in and shoehorn it in and expect everybody to just accept it. So those people are somehow a threat because they're the actual parents and they want what's good for their children.
A draft copy of the Department of Homeland Security Quadrennial Homeland Security Review outlined their intent to target, quote unquote, inaccurate information on a whole host of topics, to include the origins of COVID, vaccines, the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and U.S. support to Ukraine. Their misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation team exists to, quote, counter all types of disinformation. Once again.
Now, this part is important too because it doesn't matter if you report facts, right? So even if you're saying something that you can prove that is factual, like you have the white papers, so to speak, right? You have evidence. If the evidence goes against the narrative, then somehow you're labeled like an enemy combatant. That's where we are.
They get to determine what this disinformation is. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg revealed on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast recently that Facebook limited the exposure of the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story just weeks ahead of the 2020 election, only after talking with the FBI. Mm-hmm. Twitter took similar action, but they recently apologized for doing so, recognizing that their decision was wrong. The cozy relationship between White House officials, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and big tech is now well documented and results in private companies not restricted by the First Amendment doing the dirty censorship work of those in government who are not legally allowed to do so themselves. The threat big tech monopolies pose to our democracy is real and serious. I've had personal experience with this. After the first Democratic primary presidential debate in 2019, I was the most searched candidate of the night. Unfortunately, and suddenly, my Google Ads account was mysteriously suspended without any notice or explanation. There were no responses to our multiple attempts to resolve whatever problem could have caused this. But after some time passed, magically, my account was reinstated, again with no explanation or apology. But their actions limited my ability to connect with voters who were active.
Now, this is what Lauren Boebert was talking about, right? Now, she's a Republican. So this is my problem when, I made the last video and I'm like, it's still a wait and see, because if you have somebody that's a Republican, right, they have this happen to them. And rather than say, oh, well, we've seen this before, it shouldn't matter what side of the aisle that representative was on. If you've seen it before, then that's where you should really start, from where it actually began. Don't just say, oh, well, you guys limited my account, and who do you think you are? No. You guys have done this before, right? It seems like you think it's okay, and we're here to tell you that it's not okay. Because she's talking about 2019. We're in 2023. So it's been going on for years. And as I said, if you just listen, right? And maybe I'll actually do that. Maybe I'll actually pull that up so that you could see that part. When what's his name? When Hastings is being interviewed, I'll just do it because it'll make more sense if I do it that way. You guys could actually see it and know the actual part that I'm talking about. And I'm probably gonna scrap this live. I'm not gonna keep it up. This is more of like an experiment more than anything else, because I don't know, for some reason it wasn't streaming, then I had to re-input the stream key, then I couldn't see anything. So let's see, maybe this time around it'll work. And maybe and this is why I usually just pre-record everything, because it's easier that way. I could, and one of the main reasons is because of where I live. I live in one of these really old buildings that I guess is like a war era building, probably from around that time, and it's winter. Why am I saying that? We have radiators, right? You don't have like temperature control switches, so when the heat comes on, that's why I don't do lives like that, because it's so loud. You have no idea. And this is so slow. The computer that I had before to stream is fried, so I had to use my backup, which is what I'm using now, which was only meant for storage, right? Because it has like, I think 500 gigs of space, so that's what this was supposed to be for. But then the Dell that I had on, something's wrong with it. So now I have to use this. Come on. Yeah, but regarding the videos that I uploaded, man, like you can't even put the kind of title that you want on something, because it's like, if you title it a certain way, it's gonna get flagged. This one. All right, so this is the video that I'm talking about. So I would say watch this one here. It's only 9 minutes and 50 seconds. And also this one. All right, and this one, if you watch the part where he was talking about, it's closer to the ending. If you watch the part where he was talking about the Obama administration, he was in like, how you say, I'm just going to close this out. He was like in a panel with about 5 people. There was a guy in glasses who was moderating. He was sitting next to this black lady named, I think, Kyron. And then there were 2 other guys. And they were like pretty much going back and forth. And he was trying to make these points about how abrasive that he thinks the Obama administration is. And of course, you have these people, they're liberals and they're just like appalled at what he's saying. And I'm thinking to myself, but he's right. Now, this conversation, this happened 10 years ago. This was 10 years ago. I think that talk that he had was either in 2012 or probably shortly before he died in 2013. One of them. Right? But let's say 10 or more years ago, he already saw where things were going. So when you see people now, they're like, oh my God, how did we get here? We've been heading here for a while. Nobody has been taking note of it. And of course, this one right here about the DC matter. Right? This guy got a general fired. This woman had dirt on people in Washington because she was running like an escort service. Now, whose idea was it for the escort service? I think it was hers originally. I think it just ended up that she had people coming in from the government, and then people might have reached out to her and said, listen, do you know any secrets? Do you have any dirt? Are these things recorded? Right? Because if you go to an escort service, you don't really know what the people there are going to try to get out of you. Apart from you going there for whatever reason that you're going, if you develop a relationship and then you divulge some kind of information that is private or top secret or whatever the case is, you can end up in a whole lot of trouble. Right? So I think that is the reason that I uploaded these videos. I think it's important that people watch them and see that, number one, we've been heading here for a long time. Number two, and that would go in line with not just Hastings, the DC madam, Danny Casolaro, Gary Webb. If you have definitive information, right, that is proven to be true, you will be discredited, especially if the government is involved. They'll discredit you and they will get rid of you. Right? Which is why you see the majority of people who are in this field, they just carry the line. They carry the line because doing the opposite is hard. And it takes sacrifice. And that sacrifice might be up to your very being, your very existence. All right? Because if you watch that the video on Michael Hastings, this guy was driving a brand new Mercedes Benz. Now, I know Mercedes has its issues, the expense, the upkeep, but let's say you're a person that can afford a high-end foreign vehicle, right? Not like, let's say, the sports cars and stuff. Nah. Just let's say it's a Benz or a Beamer, whatever is brand new at that time, right? You buy one of those. And God forbid you get into a car crash. What do you expect to happen in this high-end vehicle? Me personally, I expect to get out of it. All right? Now, not saying I would be doing triple digits in, some type of residential area. That's crazy. Right? I see guys do it. Even in my neighborhood, you hear them roaring by, and I'm like, but okay, let's say you're going fast. You're on the expressway, right? You lose control, which you shouldn't, because right, the car has a lot of technology to help you out. Unless like you're drunk, which they said that this guy had been sober for like 10 years. Or I think it was more at the time, right? He had been sober for a long time. They said they found methamphetamines in his, in his blood. Okay, whatever. I don't know. Right? But the reasonable assertion is that based on everything that happened, would this man have been driving this fast in a residential area? I don't think so. it draws too many questions, right? Because even, let's say you do like to drive fast, most people who, especially if you're not too young, right? He was 33. If you have a performance vehicle, right, even if it's a sedan, you tend to only open it up when you're on the expressway, not in some residential area where you stand a chance of hitting some odd ramp or something and losing control. But then the guy they interviewed, right, the interview was in Spanish, he said that the vehicle was in flames before it even impacted. So what is that about? So you have to say, I don't know, something's going on here. Then he impacts, and then the engine is like, down the block. So first of all, he doesn't drink. Why would he be driving like that? Second of all, if you do own that kind of car, why would it be in flames before impact, then explode upon impact, and the engine be thrown mad far away? Right? Now, even the version they said he has is the smaller one, but if you've ever seen one of these cars when they've had a crash, let's say, right? The crumple zone, right, basically keeps the driver safe, right? Unless you hit like something overhead, or you hit, like the back of a tractor trailer, something like that, where, the top caves in. When you hit something, especially, it crumples in, but that cab area is usually safe, right? And you have the airbags are all deployed. There's the steering wheel airbag. There's the airbag right here on the side, right? There's usually one right next to your head, right? So if there's the impact this way, this opens, right? Sometimes they even have it in the door, right? There's airbags all over these cars, right? And that is for your safety. But to think that it was already on fire, and then you have at the end of it the woman from DARPA saying, "Hey, listen, it's possible." Just in case you were thinking it's not possible for someone to completely take over your vehicle, it is. Right. Now, if you own a considerably older vehicle, it is going to be that much harder, right? They would have to probably have access to it for a long time and probably have to do some work underneath it in order to implant systems in a very limited capacity, because let's face it, these older cars, they don't have much in terms of electricity, right? Apart from the carburetor. But yeah, and then the DC madam, I mean, they were going after this woman. She supposedly had all this information. She leaves the house. She has this box of her. Next thing, she's dead. Prior to that, she had a woman that was an employee of hers, and this woman, same thing, right? Before that. And it's like, why? But if you were saying vehemently, like, listen, I'm gonna fight it, right? I'm not gonna stand for this. I'm gonna expose everything I know. And then you suddenly wind up dead. That has to draw questions, right? Somebody has to be like, I don't know. That is very suspicious. That is very odd. But as I said, these things have happened in the past. You know, they have happened in the past, and they're continuing to happen unless things change. Once again, it's just going to be swept under the rug. This whole thing that they're talking about, big tech. I mean, this platform is included in that form of censorship, because it happens. It happens everywhere. Like, even if you say something that you have definitive proof of, even if you quote, let's say, something from I don't know, CDC, or you quote some other journalist that picked up something from, I don't know, AP, Reuters, wherever, right? You verify it, you come on the air, you say it. Next thing you know, you're in trouble because of exactly what she's talking about. And nothing's being done about it.
Actively seeking more information about my candidacy and why I was offering to serve them as president and commander-in-chief. This has not only happened to me, it's happened to other candidates running for various offices. Joe Kent, running for Congress in Washington State, is one I know personally of. This happens all the time, with these big tech monopolies interfering in our democracy by manipulating search results based on whatever it is that they want the American people to know about a particular candidate or issue that should be concerning to any one of us and all of us. Now, recently, we've learned that with the release of the Twitter files detailed by Matt Taibbi and others, high-level former FBI and CIA and other government officials were behind Hamilton 68 and their list of 644 social media accounts supposedly linked to, quote, Russian influence activities online. Now, Hamilton 68's work was widely cited as fact by institutions like Harvard and Stanford, by mainstream news organizations across the board, by members of the House of Representatives and Senate from both political parties, including the head of the Intelligence Committee. The problem is, it was false. Twitter themselves determined that the vast majority of counts that Hamilton 68 targeted on this list of 644 were, quote, neither strongly Russian nor strongly bots, end of quote. They were mostly anti-establishment American voices from across the political spectrum. I was one of them. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton accused me, a sitting member of Congress, a soldier, and a candidate running for president, of being, quote, groomed by the Russians. Her baseless smear worked as intended. It was something that was repeated over and over, headline after headline, article after article, pushed online in every way. This had the harmful impact that was intended. I could give you many examples of interactions that I've had with people throughout that campaign and still today. But I remember one in particular that had an impact. Just weeks after this statement was made, I was in South Carolina at a campaign event when an elderly woman came up to me, and I could tell that she was very disturbed. She came up and she put her hands on my shoulders and she looked into my eyes, her eyes welling up, hands shaking, and she said, "Look me in the eyes. I need to know if you are working for Putin." She was serious. I couldn't believe it. I looked her straight back in the eyes and expressed to her from my heart how much I love this country, so much that I'm willing to die for it.
This is like the statement that Joe Biden made, right? Like if you don't vote Democrat, like you're not black or something like that. So if you don't support the party narrative, if you don't support the administration, somehow that means you're working for the Russians. All right? Somehow you're under Vladimir Putin's employ, just simply for saying, listen, I don't think what you guys are doing is right. I think you're batshit crazy. You guys are all nutters. This is wrong. That means not that you have your own independent way of thinking. It means that you're working for another country.
More recently, U.S. Senator Mitt Romney accused me of treason a crime that is punishable by death under our laws. I challenged him to back this serious allegation up with evidence. What was this based on? There was no response, no explanation, no evidence, and certainly no apology. Now, these accusations are often shrugged off as, well, hey, it's politics. People say things about each other all the time. That may be easy for some of you to say, but for somebody who wears the uniform.
And that's what a lot of people do, right? They will say all kinds of things and not have any receipts, right? No proof to back it up. They'll just put it out into the ether, assuming that, the general population will be like, what is that? Wait a minute. Really? Oh my God. And that's what happens. All that has to happen is the narrative has to be put out on a big enough platform. Once it catches fire, it's like, there's no shutting it down. Until, if it's about somebody, that person has to come out, publicly address it. And I guess it depends on the, how would you say, the visibility of the person being targeted, or the visibility of the person making the accusation, or their so-called star power, right? Who are you going to believe? Right? The majority of people, you don't even have to show them any evidence. You don't show them any proof. You just say something. That's it. Whereas you will show them, multiple videos of Joe Biden sniffing women's hair, and it's like, it's nothing creepy there. What?
This is serious, and it's serious not only to me, but to my fellow service members and veterans, every one of us making a decision at some point in our lives to raise our right hand, prepared and volunteering to lay our life down for this country. What does that mean in reality? It means that before every deployment, in our own hearts, we have to make peace with the possibility that we may not come home. It means writing letters to our loved ones, trying to find the words to express our love and gratitude, knowing that that may be our final goodbye. It means for those of us who do come home, doing our best every single day to honor the great sacrifices of our brothers and sisters who paid that ultimate price. This is much bigger than me or any one individual. When those who dare to challenge the establishment are targeted by this powerful conglomerate of government, corporate media, and big tech, weaponizing all that they have against the people for their own selfish gain, it has a dangerous, chilling effect on free speech, and it sends a very powerful message. If you dare to challenge us, we will come after you. The more we allow this to happen, we start looking less and less like a democratic republic and more like a banana republic. Instead of a government ordained to secure these rights, we are now increasingly facing a government determined to take those rights away. George Washington warned, "For if men are to be precluded from offering their sentiments on a matter which may involve the most serious and alarming consequences that can invite the consideration of mankind, reason is of no use to us. The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to slaughter." We have to stop this insanity and protect these sacred freedoms. Vanquish the fear and self-censorship that is now pervasive. Every one of us taking action to breathe new life into the open marketplace of ideas that is at the heart of a thriving democracy, encouraging vigorous and substantive debate. encouraging people to think for themselves so we can draw our own conclusions, where we can disagree without devolving into hate, where we can respect each other as fellow Americans and treat each other with aloha. The work you have before you is critical for all of these reasons. The stakes are high. The consequences, for better or worse, will be long-lasting. And for the sake of the American people, our freedom, and the future of this country we love, I pray we can set aside our partisan differences and commit to standing together to defend the constitutional right of every American to live free. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congresswoman Gabbard. We appreciate those fine remarks. Congressman Raskin, we thank you for being here. Senator Johnson.
So, of course, it's not just Tulsi Gabbard, right? There's what's his name? Ted Cruz. If you listen to his State of the Union, if you put both of those like back to back and listen to them, it encapsulates the ideas that are put forward previously in the last 3 videos. Not just that, for speaking the truth, you can be targeted, but also, you can be censored, which is one of the biggest things that we have facing us now. Censorship to me, and, I don't understand this new set of Americans that we have. They use the term, a lot of conservatives, I guess. I'm not even sure if they are, but that's what they call themselves. They use the term, the super woke, or, I don't really like that term because that's not where it originated from. To me, it's more like you have people who just they completely ignore what the Constitution stands for. Right? Now, if you completely ignore that, what do you have? Right? So not only do they ignore the Constitution, they don't want to abide by it. They ignore the Judeo-Christian principles, which are the foundation and the bedrock of society. But at the same time, they want to be protected. If you ignore both of these things, there is no protection for you. What you will have is a free-for-all. What you will have is, may the best man win. That's what it comes down to. That means if somebody sees you out in the street and you said something that they don't like, it's a free-for-all. They can deal with you in whichever way they deem fit. Now, who the hell wants that? That's why you should follow the Constitution. Freedom of speech. Right? So you can say something, people don't like it, but not interested. They like it, but okay, yeah, I think this person has a point. All right, we're not always going to agree on anything, but if we have a set of rules, laws that we have to live under, then they should apply across the board, regardless of what, political party or affiliation or group you claim, regardless of ethnicity. So you should, what right do you have to tell a person, well, you're black, but if you're voting for Trump or some Republican, nah, you're not really black. What? No, that person can decide who they want to vote for. In the case of, what's the name? Kanye West. All right, you want to vote for Trump, people, this guy's coon, he's this, he's that. That's his choice. It should be everybody's choice. Right? That's what makes this place different from so many others. Right? We're not communists over here. Not socialists. It's a republic. And people seem to forget that. Anyways, like I said, I'm gonna scrap this live. This was more or less just a trial to make sure that it's running. Because I was having some problems uploading my stream key. I'm going to retool it so that I can run it out of OBS strictly. I don't know that I want to run it out of YouTube. I mean, I could, but nah. I don't know. I would probably prefer to do it inside OBS. So I'll probably do that and do it over. Yeah. But anyways, I just wanted to say that real quick. And I don't know, I probably spent more time on this than I had initially planned to, but you know, it is what it is. I think I made the points that I wanted to make. I can always make them again. It's not a big deal. But this speech here, as well as, like I said, the one that Ted Cruz made, that is, yeah, that isn't. I did not even label this. Why is this? See, I don't know. But anyways, like I said, I'm scrapping this, so it doesn't matter. When I redo it, I'm probably going to probably gonna have to run it from YouTube in order to change the name first. But yeah, so I would say watch the last three. When there's a car crash, not a car crash. Can you trust the corporate media? And of course, the last one with Lauren Boebert. Right, they will put forth all the ideas that you see encapsulated in what you just heard from Tulsi Gabbard as well as Ted Cruz. And like I said, I'm going to do this over. But I just wanted to make sure it was working first. So this is more like a trial and error piece. Probably just going to keep it private. Once I get out of this, I'll close it down and keep it private. But yeah, and this freaking laptop, this one that I'm using now, is singing so slow. God help me. I missed my other one. But, you know, these things happen. So I will stop the stream now. Like I said, I'll do it over. Probably where I can communicate if anybody's in the stream, because right now I don't even know, because I didn't do it through YouTube. I ran it through here first just to see, just to make sure the stream key's working, and it seems to be working just fine. So I guess I'll close it off. Until next time, sayonara. Happy Sunday. I don't know who's going to be watching the Super Bowl. I may or may not. I haven't decided yet. Not that interested, but we'll see. I'm supposed to do a show tonight, actually, which should be pretty interesting because I'm supposed to have a couple callers on. It's what do you call it? It's like a relationship show, kind of. So that should be interesting. If I can get them both at the same time, then if I can get them both at the same time, it'll be a great show. If I can't, I don't know if I'll still do it, but we'll see.